You think you are rational. You think you make your own choices. You are wrong. Your brain is riddled with glitches, invisible mental shortcuts that make you buy things you don't need, stay in bad relationships, and waste years of your life. These are called cognitive biases. Today, I will expose the 10 most dangerous mental errors that are quietly costing you money, time, and opportunities. Let's fix your operating system. Bias 1. The sunk cost fallacy. Why you finish a boring movie or stay in a bad job just because you invested time. The sunk cost fallacy is a decision trap that makes you hang on to a choice because you already spent time, money, or effort. You might finish a boring movie not to waste what you already gave it. That reasoning ignores what's coming next and what you could gain by cutting your losses. The core idea is simple. Past costs don't determine future value. Only future costs and benefits should guide the next move. Our brains mistake irrecoverable past investments for a reason to keep spinning the wheel. Loss aversion colors the picture, making a loss feel bigger than a comparable gain. A social reflex kicks in too, as you want to look consistent with the story you tell yourself about your choices. When you've already invested, it hurts more to admit waste than to admit a misstep in planning. The effect can turn a small commitment into a stubborn rope you can't untie. Consider a movie you've started that never grabs you. You've watched a chunk of it, so you tell yourself you owe it to that time to see it through. The plot never improves, yet the urge to finish grows stronger with every minute wasted. The same logic can lock you into a bad job, a bad relationship, or a dubious subscription. You tell yourself, I've already put in so much, and that thought becomes a brake on a smarter choice. Here's how to sidestep it, starting now. Treat time like money and ask only about future value, not past spend. Set a clear exit rule for each commitment. For example, if a movie doesn't engage by a certain point, stop. If a job isn't improving after a defined period, reassess. Create a pre-commitment. Decide in advance how long you'll invest before reevaluating. When in doubt, write down 3 reasons to quit and 3 reasons to continue. Then act on the stronger future case. Separate the past costs from the decision you face now, as if they belong to a different room. With these moves, you'll free yourself to choose based on what's ahead, not what's already gone. Bias 2. Anchoring bias. Why you think a $50 shirt is cheap just because it was marked down from $100. Anchoring bias kicks in the moment the first price lands on your radar. That initial figure becomes a magnet your brain keeps returning to, shaping judgments long after the tag is out of sight. A shirt marked from $100 to $50 looks like a bargain because the anchor is $100, not because $50 is objectively cheap for that shirt. Your mind treats that $50 as the reference point, and every other thought about value rallies around it. The result is a quick verdict. Discount equals good deal, even if the shirt isn't worth it. Discounts are the nozzle that sprays the anchor into action. When you see was $100, now $50, your brain latches to that old price and treats the sale as proof of value. That illusion is bolstered by loss aversion. We fear paying more than necessary, so the $50 tag feels like a saving even if the shirt isn't great or the size is off. The bigger the original price, the bigger the perceived discount. A $60 tee can feel cheap after a $120 anchor, even if $60 isn't a fair price for that design. To outsmart anchoring, flip the reference. Ask yourself what you'd pay if the item weren't on sale. Shop around for the same item at other retailers to see if the markdown price is truly competitive. Calculate price per wear and long-term value, not just the immediate thrill of a discount. Set a firm maximum you're willing to spend before you start looking, and stick to it. Wait 24 hours if you can, because impulse is the heart's best friend when a sale sign is flashing. Use price tracking tools or quick comparisons to verify that this is a real bargain, not just a clever anchor at work. Anchoring shows up everywhere, from online flash sales to grocery store end caps. If you're chasing a deal, you might skip the question of utility and end up with something you rarely use. Keep a running sense of your own baseline price and compare apples to apples, not to an alluring discount. Your wallet will be a little happier when you keep anchors honest, and your decisions a lot more intentional. Bias 3. Confirmation bias. Why you only read news that agrees with you and ignore the truth. Confirmation bias is the habit of favoring information that confirms your beliefs while discounting what contradicts them. A mental reflex that feels like certainty but costs you money and time. Your brain takes the path of least resistance. When you scroll through a feed, you're not just reading headlines. You're curating a mirror that reflects your own thinking back at you. The filter is relentless. and it's powered by how modern news ecosystems are designed to reward engagement with familiar ideas. You tend to open outlets that preach to your choir and skip those that might challenge you. That comfort is contagious. Over time, you spend hours consuming the same ideas, while you miss signals about money, risk, and opportunity. For instance, an investor who only reads bullish coverage about a stock may hold on as risks mount, missing a downside cue. The cost isn't dramatic in a single moment, but it compounds. You end up making decisions on partially correct information, or no information at all, which costs you real money and time. Countering it starts with intentional exposure to what disagrees with you. Diversify sources, seek primary documents rather than sensational retellings, and check a source's funding or edits. Pause before sharing. Test a claim against a neutral fact-checker or a rival outlet. Build a habit of one opposing view per week. Use simple rules of thumb. If two credible sources contradict each other, slow down. Search for the original data, not the headline. Turn your feed into a tool for learning, not a weapon for confirmation. These tiny habits save money by reducing bad bets and wasted time on empty arguments. They also protect your time from being sucked into endless debates that go nowhere. Think of it as pruning a plant. You remove the dead leaves to let the new grow through. Your future self will thank you for the clearer picture, even if it's not as comforting. Bias 4, the halo effect. Why we automatically trust attractive people, and why that is dangerous. The halo effect happens when a single positive trait colors judgments about other traits, and attractive people often benefit from this bias without realizing it. In practical terms, a friendly smile, a polished appearance, or confident posture can make you perceive someone as more competent, honest, and capable, just because they look good. In hiring, a candidate who is easy on the eyes can be rated as more skilled or likable, even when their objective qualifications are similar to equally capable contenders. In sales, a well-presented salesperson can close a deal more easily, not because the product is different, but because the person selling it seems trustworthy. The danger is that your gut feeling about the person's appearance shortcuts you past real evidence. The underlying mechanism is simple and sneaky. We rely on quick judgments to navigate a busy world, and attractiveness acts like a cue that signals other positives. A person who seems healthier or more confident triggers assumptions about reliability, intelligence, and honesty. That mental shortcut saves time, but it trips you up when decisions hinge on actual performance, not vibes. Think of the halo as a spotlight that shines across every trait you evaluate, nudging you toward a favorable overall impression. When the spotlight lands on someone you like, you're less likely to notice red flags, gaps in experience, or misaligned incentives. Money and time go out the window when the halo steers decisions. In the workplace, you might hire someone who fits the image instead of the role, incurring onboarding costs and lost productivity while you learn the mismatch. In consumer life, you might pay more for a service or trust a recommendation simply because the messenger is charming or attractive, not because the offer is the best value. Endorsements from attractive faces can make brands seem more credible, which nudges you toward purchases you wouldn't make based on features alone. In negotiations, a confident, good-looking counterpart can lead to more favorable terms for them and more frustration for you, since the decision isn't grounded in data. The cumulative effect is wasted time chasing quality that isn't there and money spent on bias-driven choices. Ways to counteract the halo without grinding to a halt are practical and doable. Use objective criteria and a scoring system for hires, proposals, and purchases, and insist on evidence for each claim. Separate appearance from evaluation by removing likeness cues early in the process, when possible. Seek second opinions. Different eyes tend to spot what you miss when your judgment is shading toward warmth. Default to standardized questions and structured interviews so you compare apples to apples. In consumer deals, slow down, compare features, prices, and aftercare, and watch for decisions that feel fast or influenced by charm. Make a habit of documenting your reasoning so bias doesn't sneak in invisibly. With a little discipline, the halo loses its grip, and your decisions become more about performance than pizzazz. Bias 5. Loss aversion. Why the pain of losing $10 is stronger than the joy of finding $10. Loss aversion is a well-established bias in decision-making. People feel the sting of a loss more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. In plain terms, the same amount hurts you more when it's lost than it helps when it's gained. The research, notably prospect theory, shows losses loom larger than gains, roughly twice as powerful in impact. That's not just math, it's a human wiring thing. Our brains treat a $10 loss as a bigger disruption than a $10 gain as a bigger bonus. The result is a lot of everyday behavior that looks irrational on the surface but makes a lot of sense if you're trying to avoid pain. The pain of losing $10 can feel like a longer, sharper bruise than the quick joy of finding $10. That distinction matters in ordinary spending and saving. You might hold onto a subscription you rarely use simply because canceling feels like admitting a loss of convenience, even though the monthly price adds up. You'll stick with a stock that's fallen in value rather than realize the loss, because selling would lock in bad news and the memory of that loss sticks in your mind longer than the brief thrill of a gain price. Tiny decisions add up. A $10 coupon you don't redeem, an impulsive add-on you buy to not waste the discount, or a non-refundable ticket you still attend even when it's a stretch, all because the loss side of the scale stings more. Loss aversion also shows up in how you manage time and opportunities. You'll overreact to a potential loss of not catching a deal, so you delay or escalate a decision to avoid the imagined pain of missing out. You'll choose safer, smaller bets to avoid the chance of a big loss, even when bigger gains are available with a little risk. The effect nudges you toward perpetual caution rather than bold experimentation, and it makes you value the avoidance of loss as much as, or more than, the pursuit of gain. In negotiations, framing matters. People react more strongly to the fear of losing a favorable position than to the chance of gaining a better one. So how do you counteract it without turning into a spendthrift or a risk junkie? Reframe decisions around gains rather than losses, and set concrete rules before emotion takes over. Use pre-commitments. Auto-cancel subscriptions after trial, or set a fixed stop-loss rule for investments so you don't ride out a loss in the name of hoping for a rebound. Put decisions on hold for a cooling period, then revisit with a calm, loss-free mindset. Track losses and gains with a simple ledger, and remind yourself that most small losses happen along the way to meaningful gains if you're disciplined about exits. The more you practice separating the emotional sting from the rational math, the less the texture of loss sways your choices, and your wallet starts keeping up with your intentions. Bias 6. The Spotlight Effect. Stop worrying. Nobody is looking at you. Everyone is looking at themselves. The spotlight effect makes people overestimate how much others notice their clothes, mistakes, or nervous habits. In reality, most people are busy with their own concerns and barely register the details you fixate on. Stop worrying. Nobody is looking at you. Everyone is looking at themselves. The misread is common, but it costs you in quiet, everyday ways if you let it run your schedule. That cost shows up in dollars and minutes. You might buy a new outfit for every big meeting, hoping it signals competence, when a clean, comfortable look would do. You might spend extra time perfecting a reply before sending an email, fearing a tiny typo will derail your career. You skip speaking up in a team chat because you dread a slip of the tongue, and the idea of being judged slows your momentum. When you do present, you rehearse line after line and miss the chance to react to real-time feedback. All of this time and money are siphoned off by a belief that others are watching your every move. Ways to counter are simple, once you see the pattern. Start with a reality check after events. What did others actually notice? A missed word? A shrug? Chances are only a few people will remember, and even then not for long. Schedule a 5-minute worry window and then move on to the next task. Dress in a practical, comfortable outfit and keep a small wardrobe that fits most situations. When you catch yourself spiraling, do a quick grounding exercise, like naming 5 things you can see, hear, or touch. Seek fast, honest feedback from a trusted colleague, not a cousin on social media. Focus your energy on the message you want to convey, not on the micro details of your appearance. By letting the spotlight stay dim, you free up time, money, and mental energy for real work. The audience is bigger than a single person and less judgmental than you assume. The goal is not to pretend nothing matters, but to calibrate what actually matters. Most days, the little slips matter far less than your decisions to show up and do the work. Bias 7. Survivorship Bias. Why copying the habits of billionaires won't make you rich? You don't see the failures. Survivorship bias is the tendency to notice successful outcomes while ignoring failures that didn't survive. You only hear the stories that made it, which makes the path look clean and linear. The powerful ascent of a few names is highlighted while the long tail of failed experiments stays out of sight. That selective spotlight creates an illusion. If the last chapter is a winner, the entire book is a blueprint. Copying the habits of billionaires won't guarantee riches, because you're not seeing the failures that didn't make it. To see past the bias, look for patterns across many people, not just the top tier. The daily routine of a billionaire is the product of enormous resources, networks, and luck, not a one-to-one recipe for everyone. Focus on transferable principles rather than exact rituals. Emphasize things you can control, discipline testing, learning from small bets, and prioritizing high-leverage activities. When you study success, seek a mosaic of stories, not a single splashy headline. If a habit seems compelling, ask what the base rate of success is for people like you who don't have the same starting conditions. Then test, measure, adjust. That's how you move from imitation to informed adaptation. Sunk cost is the trap you fall into when past investments lock future decisions. Bad movies are a handy, painful metaphor. You buy a ticket, you sit through a film you dislike, and you tell yourself you've already paid for it, so you might as well endure. In business, the same logic can creep in. You stay with a failing project because you poured time and money into it, hoping a turnaround will materialize. Survivorship bias feeds this by praising the one pivot that worked while concealing all the dead ends. The antidote is clear. Set explicit exit rules, evaluate on forward value, and be willing to cut losses when the odds aren't in your favor. Treat every new habit as a test, not a destiny. Anchoring shows up when a high initial price or a flashy story sticks in your head. Discounts then look like bargains, and you lock in a belief about value based on a single number you encountered first. That effect compounds with survivorship bias. The success stories feel like proof that certain routines work, so the price or effort to adopt them seems justified, even if your situation differs. The practical fix is to gather broader data, compare multiple sources, and demand context. Don't rely on a single testimonial or a dramatic headline. Test ideas at small scale, track outcomes, and question whether the underlying conditions match yours. In the end, the smarter move isn't memorizing a billionaire's ritual. It's building a personalized playbook grounded in diverse experiences, real data, and measured experimentation. Bias 8. The availability heuristic. Why you fear plane crashes, which are rare, but ignore car accidents. The availability heuristic makes dramatic events feel more common than they are. People notice plane crashes in headlines, and those vivid stories stick in memory. In reality, flying is extremely safe per mile flown, but the mind treats the sky as riskier because the new spotlight makes rare disasters feel personal. That bias isn't about logic, it's about what's most salient in the moment. As a result, many people fear air travel more than car travel, even though the actual chances in everyday life often tilt the other way. A short flight can seem like a high-stakes gamble while a routine road trip feels ordinary, even if the road route involves more exposure to everyday hazards. The upshot shows up in money and time. Vacations get postponed or cancelled. Routes are changed to avoid flying. Long road trips eat up hours and fuel. People also gravitate towards safety buys that rubber-stamp fear, extra insurance, seat upgrades, or premium travel options that may not improve actual risk so much as soothe anxiety. The cost here isn't just dollars bumped up front. It's hours spent in transit, fatigue, and the opportunity cost of doing something more efficient. To counter this bias, bring numbers to bear in a practical way. Compare risk using base rates and per-mile perspectives rather than dramatic event stories. When planning a trip, weigh time saved, money spent, and health of your schedule by flying versus driving, not by the loudness of headlines. Limit exposure to sensational coverage and rely on trusted, balanced sources for numbers about travel risk. Use a simple memory free check after you've gathered the facts. What is the actual difference in time and cost between the two modes, given your route and priorities? A lightweight mental model helps. Treat rare events as rare, and let routine, everyday risks guide the plan. Small adjustments here can compound into big wins. Decide in advance how you'll approach travel on a given trip, and stick to a rule based on actual time and cost rather than fear. When you catch yourself rethinking due to a headline, pause and fetch the base rate view. You'll often find that the fastest, cheapest choice aligns with your real goals, not the loudest story. The availability bias is subtle, but its price tag is loud enough to notice once you look at the data. Facing it lets you save money and reclaim time you were about to sacrifice to a fear that a headline created. Bias 9. The Dunning-Kruger Effect. Why stupid people think they are smart, and smart people doubt themselves. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is real enough to matter in your wallet and your calendar. People with limited skill in a domain tend to overestimate how much they know, while those who are actually skilled often doubt themselves. The gap isn't about intelligence so much as awareness. If you don't know what you don't know, you scream, "I've got this," and press on. That mix fuels sloppy decisions that cost time and money in small steps and big leaps. Consider a novice investor who reads a couple of hot takes and declares a genius plan. They skim headline signals, skip risk checks, and treat every chart as a crystal ball. The discipline you'd expect from a pro, diversification, risk budgeting, scenario planning, gets crowded out by certainty. Money leaks away not from clever moves, but from overconfidence dressed as certainty. Time drains away as you chase loud calls and quick wins instead of careful, repeatable processes. The pattern repeats in daily life, not just on flashy forums. Smart people can fall into a different pit. They doubt their own judgment even when they're solidly capable. They assume the standard is higher than it is, or they conflate expertise with omniscience. They second-guess the obvious steps and resist asking for help, thinking that asking means weakness. The result is slow decisions, missed opportunities, or overanalysis that stalls progress. Confidence collapses into hesitation, and hesitation costs you both dollars and days. To counter the drift, build calibration into your routine. Track your bets, not just your outcomes, and compare them to a clear baseline. Seek quick, honest feedback from people who know more than you do about the topic. Use checklists and decision journals so you can see where your confidence outruns the evidence. Put in place a simple rule. If you're unsure, test a small version of the decision first or bring in a second pair of eyes. Practice deliberate reflection after each decision, labeling what you believed with the evidence you actually had. The aim isn't to crush confidence but to align it with reality. In practice, this shows up in everyday life as fewer trivial misreads and fewer dramatic misfires. You'll spot when a gut hunch is really just a bias wearing confidence as a mask. You'll pause before leaping into a hefty commitment and instead run a cheap pilot or seek a second opinion. The payoff is smoother progress and less wasted time chasing certainty that doesn't exist. The Dunning-Kruger Effect isn't a moral flaw. It's a cognitive shortcut that backfires when the environment is complex. Calibrate your confidence, and the money follows the accuracy. Bias 10. Present bias. Why you choose one cookie today instead of 2 cookies tomorrow. Procrastination. Present bias is the brain's short-sighted habit of valuing the immediate reward more than the future one. It loves the taste of 1 cookie today, even when 2 cookies tomorrow would bring more satisfaction. Procrastination blooms from that taste for now mindset, turning big future wins into delayed promises. It isn't plotting a theft, it's your mental shortcuts doing a tidy little shortcut dance. In ordinary life, this shows up everywhere you can measure money and time. A tiny impulse by today chips away at savings that compound month after month. A small delay in paying a bill feels harmless, but late payments can cost you interest, fees, and a creeping sense that the future self has to clean up a mess you could have avoided. Even routines matter. Skipping a 10-minute workout now can mean missing out on energy and progress you'd feel a week from today. The cookie metaphor isn't just cute. It's a daily negotiation your future self has to win. What makes present bias so costly isn't the single choice, but the pattern. Small, frequent decisions accumulate, turning opportunities into regrets. Future gains shrink in your mind when you're offered an immediate bite of satisfaction, so the long-term payoff drifts out of sight. It's not about being lazy, it's about the brain signaling, reward now, worry later, and the worry tends to stay in the future where it's easy to ignore. Time passes, savings dwindle, and the path to goals grows thinner with every 1 cookie today decision. You can outsmart it with practical shifts. Create commitment devices that force a future you to follow through. Automatic transfers to savings on payday, for example, so there's less room for a spontaneous withdrawal. Temptation bundling helps too. Pair a desired, enjoyable activity with a duty you'd otherwise skip, like listening to a favorite podcast only while you tidy. Make the future payoff visible now. Set concrete, short-term milestones and attach a tangible reward to hitting them. Design your environment to reduce friction for good choices and increase it for easy, fleeting satisfactions. Small, deliberate changes reset the balance in favor of the future you, and the cookies start tasting less like liberation and more like a quiet, smart win. You cannot delete these biases, but you can spot them. Biases stick around regardless of how sharp you think you are. Sunk cost fallacy shows up when a bad movie keeps playing because you paid for the ticket, and you tell yourself the time invested must count for something. The logic is simple yet stubborn. Sunk costs shouldn't govern present choices, but emotions and momentum make them do it anyway. The fix is to separate what you already spent from what you should do next, anchoring Drape's judgments in a single number. A big sticker price or a first discount sets a ceiling you compare everything against. Then the sale price might look sweet, even if it isn't a good deal overall. Availability sneaks in when vivid stories shape risk and value more than data. If you just read a few sensational headlines about a new gadget, you'll overestimate its reliability or risk and pay more than you should. Confirmation bias nudges us to cherry-pick evidence that confirms what we already believe. If a product seems solid in 2 positive reviews, you'll ignore a dozen thorough critiques. Loss aversion makes losses loom larger than gains of the same size. You hold on to a losing investment or skip a repair because the pain of a loss feels heavier than the potential benefit. The endowment effect bites when you own something and suddenly price it higher than the market would pay. Your personal attachment inflates its value. Overconfidence reappears as you double down on a risky plan because you overestimate your edge. Status quo bias keeps you in the same subscription, routine, or tech setup even when a better option exists. Framing makes the same choice feel different depending on presentation. 90% fat-free sounds healthier than 10% fat, even though they're the same. Hyperbolic discounting will have you skip saving for retirement today in favor of a small instant gain, or buy a gadget you'll barely use because the payoff is immediate. Each of these leeches on time and money hides in plain sight. The trick is to catch them as they flicker. Spotting is the first step, practical and doable. Use a simple 3-question test before any big buy or long-term commitment. What would happen if I ignored this bias? What does the data actually say? Not the story I'm telling myself. What would a skeptic say? Then apply concrete fixes. Pre-commitments like automatic savings, cooling off periods, and side-by-side comparisons with neutral sources. When you see anchoring at a storefront, look for a second price from a different retailer. For framing, rephrase options in terms of losses rather than gains to reveal the real impact. For sunk costs, set a shadow budget that excludes past spending from the decision calculus. For availability, seek base rate data and diversify your information sources. For the endowment effect, pause before selling, as if you owned both sides of the deal. For time discounting, commit to postponing big decisions for a day. Quick wins add up. Cancel auto-renewals you never use, set alerts to reprice, and track actual usage over a month. Here's the ending you asked for, delivered fast and practical. 10 biases that quietly drain your money and your time, with real-world hooks you'll recognize. Sunk cost fallacy. You sit through a terrible movie just to get your money's worth and convince yourself you're not losing anything. Don't chase the past. If it's no longer useful, bail and move on. Anchoring. That first price in a sale sticks in your head, so the deal suddenly feels real even if the value isn't there. Check the real value, not the opening tag, and compare apples to apples, not to the first number you saw. Availability heuristic. Vivid memories feel like they're common truths. A flashy failure or a loud success story can push you into buying or deciding too fast. Seek the full picture, not the loudest memory. Confirmation bias. You gravitate toward what confirms your plan and gloss over the counterpoints. Challenge your own beliefs with a quick devil's advocate check before you commit. Loss aversion. The sting of a potential loss weighs more than the joy of a gain. You skip good opportunities because the downside feels too painful. Reframe decisions in expected value, not in will I regret this. Framing effect. The same choice lands differently depending on how it's pitched. A neutral framing usually shows you options in a truer light. Watch for clever wordplay that nudges you. Status quo bias. Defaults and inertia win. Auto-renew. Default settings. The path of least resistance. These sneak in and cost you time and money. Pause, review, and reset defaults when it makes sense. Endowment effect. You value what you already own more just because you own it. That good enough upgrade feels pricey later when you realize you're clinging to an asset you don't even use. Hindsight bias. After the result, you tell yourself you'd seen it coming all along. It's comforting, but it doesn't help you make better decisions next time. Planning fallacy. You estimate tasks will take less time than they do, so you fill the calendar and then scramble. Add a healthy buffer and time box your steps to keep deadlines honest. Key points, in one breath. Awareness first, then simple checks, then small habits that rewrite your defaults. If any of these hit home, you're not alone. These patterns show up in daily life for almost everyone trying to balance money, time, and effort. Natural viewer connection. You're busy, you're smart, and you're trying to do better with the noise of decisions all around you. Recognizing these biases is the first win, because it means you can outsmart them next time you're faced with a real choice. Smooth call to action. If this clicked, hit like, subscribe, and share with someone who could use a quick bias wake-up call. Drop a comment with the bias that hits you hardest this week, the one you're going to test first. Genuine future content mention. In the next video, I'll walk you through a simple 5-minute bias auditing routine you can run before big purchases or deadlines. We'll frame it as a tiny daily habit, plus I'll share a live mini experiment you can try with me to see these biases in action. Thanks for sticking with it. See you in the next one, where we turn these fast lessons into real tweaks you can actually use.